Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about the book Antivirus. If you have not read it yet, I would highly recommend it. It's a very kind of goes with the times that we're living in right now, which is pretty interesting. The basic synopsis of the book, it starts off with it's in Great Britain, and you're following a young Secret Service female character, who in a very short, very descriptive prologue is attacked while on a mission. This leads to her being a kind of a recluse. She refuses to go outside. She has panic attacks if she gets near the door. It makes it very hard for her to do her job. They have her working remotely from home, but she has lost a lot of the privileges that came with the position she held before because she's unable to do field work. Her mate, her girlfriend is Jack, and Jack works for a charity. And all that Callie knows is that Jack works for a charity and goes into the red zone. And Jack comes home later and later every night, which leaves Callie super freaked out and super worried. And she has panic attacks when Jack doesn't come home. And then there is her friend. He's a gentleman. I think his name was Paul. Paul actually works for the local police. He's a police officer. And when you first see Paul, he's very concerned for Callie, very worried about her. Him and Jack do not get along. He doesn't like Jack. He thinks she's bad for Callie. And Callie, he wants them to get along, wants them to not fight for her sake. But obviously that doesn't seem to work out for either of them. And Paul basically tells Jack that she needs to take better care of Callie. And then there is a night where there's a fire in the red zone. And you have to understand, in this world, there was a pandemic and it shut down the country. It shut down the whole world, basically. And 3 years prior, Wales had gained independence from England. And so Wales was now its own country. And Callie's mom had moved to Wales. And so that's where she lived. And so there were these checkpoints, and there's all these disinfecting stations and everything so that they can try and keep people, the infected, separated from the non-infected. And Parliament had all died in the second wave. And so the person who was the prime minister had not been the prime minister at the beginning of the pandemic. And so it's kind of one of those things where they didn't vote these people in, so they don't really know them, right? Well, Callie watches the fire in the red zone on TV and sees Jack on TV and sees Jack kiss another woman on TV and freaks out because, she starts to suspect that the late nights and the coming home without telling her, giving her much information, has she been seeing this woman behind her back? And does she really know Jack as she, thought she did? And so using her credentials and the workspace she has at home, she logs in and she starts doing research on Jack and finds out that Jack is not Jack's name. Jack's first name is actually Jude. And it gets her really confused and she gets really worried. And then Paul shows up with the forces, the police, and basically tells her that that this is, that she needs to cooperate, and he's going to tell her what's going on. They're not there for her. And so then he comes back later and he hands her back her house key. And she's like, well, what's this? What's going on? Does it not work? Do I need to get you a new one? And he was like, no, I can no longer associate with you. He was like, you are going to get me disappeared, and I'm not willing to do that. So you need to get rid of Jack, is basically what he tells her, is that because him knowing that Jack goes into the red zone and not reporting it could get him in trouble. Her knowing that Jack goes into the red zone and not reporting it could get her in trouble. And so it just kind of culminates into this thing where he's gone. He completely disappears from her life. That's the last you ever see of him in the book, which struck me as a little weird. Like, I was like, oh, okay, so this guy, maybe I thought at the beginning, the way he was so protective of her, I was like, oh, maybe he has feelings for her and that's why he doesn't like Jack. And then he just kind of disappeared. And I was like, well, that's really weird. It was something that was a little funny. I thought it would have been an interesting love triangle between the three of them, and then he was just gone. And then of course the police do show up and end up arresting Jack. Callie doesn't confront her initially. She basically Jack tries to get Callie to stick up for her. Oh yeah, I was here the whole night of the red zone fire. And Callie finally was like, no, you weren't. And the police haul her away for questioning. And so then, of course, it's like, okay, well, so are we broken up? Are we not broken up? And then it takes Callie time to work up her ability to be able to step out of the house and to be able to get out there and do what, you know, she wants to do more. She wants to figure out what it was that Jack was doing. She had put a tracer in Jack's bag, so she knew what area Jack had gone to. And so she wanted to follow. And her first step of actually going out, she stood in the doorway, and a couple of her neighbors were like, oh, there you are, we've missed you. And one sweet one was telling her about her daughter who was down in the state pen for something that really wasn't like a serious crime. It was kind of described as a low level crime, and she was going to be getting out soon, and the mom wanted to go see her, but she didn't have, you know, a car. Gas was really expensive. So Callie was like, oh, I could take you. Which meant that the following day she'd have to go outside. And so she does. And she, you know, goes to get her car, finds that the car's been well maintained and it's parked differently than what she parked it. And someone's been driving it. And so then she thinks, oh, well, Jack's been driving my car. And so she gets the neighbor and she goes to the penitentiary, and she gets to see her friend, because she was a friend with this girl before. And then on her way out, she's sitting in her car, and this woman and child are screaming at the guard and causing a whole scene because they won't let her in to see her mom or somebody. And so she kind of steps in and, you know, to like talk to the child, kind of keep the child calm while the mom has a complete freak out. And then the mom, of course, starts screaming at her because Callie, when she was injured on the mission, actually got a scar from her eye all the way down through her chest, and so it's pulled on her eye. It's pulled her eye down, and it just left this really bad scar. And so she has been embarrassed because people, you know, look at her, talk at her. Oh, is she infected? Is she one of the diseased ones? Kind of thing. And so that the woman yelling really kind of threw her off, and she struggled with dealing with that for a while. But she eventually started venturing out, and so she went to where she thought Jack had been, and she couldn't find this entrance into the red zone that Jack had obviously been using. Like, there was nothing. She couldn't find it. And then her phone rings, and when she answers it, it's Jack, and Jack is like talking like a madwoman and saying things that Callie doesn't understand and cackling into the phone, and are you happy what you did to me kind of thing. And it's just really weird because, like, if this was someone that you had loved and cared about, and you betrayed them, and you found out that they knew you betrayed them, and then they turned you in for doing illegal activities, like, it's just all like a simple conversation would have seriously fixed this whole thing, right? So then she runs into, there's a homeless guy who shoots a fox in the middle of the street, and he says a couple of like really weird cryptic things to her, and so she ducks into this cafe, where then she's pulled aside by two men who tell her that they've been watching her, keeping an eye on her and her girlfriend. They know who they are, and they need their help. The border between Wales and England has been shut down, and basically the two countries are standing off against each other, and they present her with a book. Now, books are banned because paper's been banned, and so this is something that could get her arrested if she was ever caught with this. And it's got news clippings and things that just kind of show that England is building up to something. And apparently what England's building up to is that there's a vast reservoir of oil underneath the land, and the only way they can get to the oil is to get the people out. So the plan is supposedly there's going to be a third wave of the pandemic, and it's going to kill off most of the people that would be in the way. They've already started storing the workers that they need to get this oil in the state penitentiary, which the girl she visited had mentioned that there's been a lot of movement in the prison, and it's really weird, and these people are coming and then disappearing, and we don't know who they are. And then it's mentioned that they're going to use the old like nuclear silos for like nuclear power, because now everybody's on green power, right? And they're going to use those because they're already built, they're already down underground to get oil. They've already started putting in okay, that's interesting. Then they tell her that the only way that they'll let her work with them is if Jack agrees to, because Jack has connections in the red zone and can get in and out of the red zone without being seen. So she has to talk to her. So she gets back to the apartment. Jack's there. She never changed the locks. She never did anything to prevent this woman from getting back into her place. She just, oh, Jack's here. Oh, darn. Oh, come on, lady, you had days to make it so that she couldn't get back in, and you let her back in. Okay. So then they're talking, and she shows Jack the book, and she tells her the plan, and Jack doesn't trust these guys. I want to go meet them with you. So she took him to go meet them, and they ran into the homeless guy again, and they got to talk. Jack met the guys, and it was all very, well, we want proof. And so the proof was they were going to go to Wales to meet the Prime Minister of Wales, because one of the two guys met in the cafe is the Prime Minister's son from his first marriage. And they were like, okay, we agree to this. So they give her, and the homeless guy's part of it. He's one of them. And so when he bumps into her, he slips this little disc thing into her pocket, which allows her to access levels of the security system that she didn't have access to. And it was supposed to hide her keystrokes and make it so that she could get information that normally she wouldn't have access to. And so she goes ahead and she uses it. Just go ahead and do it. Do what you need to do. And so she does. She starts snooping. She looks around. Okay, so she finds this information. It's very valuable. So they go to Wales. They meet the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, backs up everything these two gentlemen have told them. And so then they end up going back to the UK, to England, so that they can then do what it is that they have to do. And so Callie on the one side gathering all the information that they need to, because basically what's going to happen is Wales is going to attack England, and they're going to try to overpower the England's parliament and force them to not kill all of their people. And they need the backup of all the other superpowers to do so, but the superpowers require proof. So Callie gets them the proof. Jack goes into the red zone and confirms that the people that they thought were there are there. So this really is going to happen. They're going to try and kill all these people. And then they take that proof and they go, they're going to go back. Well, at one point, the homeless man, Callie goes to the cafe, and the homeless man stops her. And he's like, there's a mole. Something's up. Don't trust anybody. You need to look into it, right? So with that little disc, she decides to do a deeper background on the two men. And come to find out that the stepfather of the Prime Minister's son was one of the nuclear scientists, I guess, that had been hauled away initially, saying that something like this was going to happen. And the stepson was guilty. Like, he was taking payoffs, and he had kidnapped the Prime Minister's family, and just a really bad dude. But they didn't really figure that out till they got to Wales. So they got to Wales, and they had given Callie a Polaroid camera at one point, and she had gone down into the tunnels and had taken pictures of the tunnels, which were now clean and had equipment in them, and it was all very not unused, which was odd. But that's where they were moving and transporting all of their stuff to build these oil refineries. And so she took had the Polaroid with her, and she brought her laptop, and she did a little deep dive into the two gentlemen, and that's when she found out about the son. And so she snapped some Polaroids, gave them to Jack, and then went to confront him. And it didn't go so well. He charged her, got the gun away. Then he revealed that he was the one who had scarred her on her last field mission. And just that this guy was just nuts. He was an absolute psycho. And Jack came in to try and stop him, and then that's when the other gentleman showed up, Stephen, I think his name was, and the Prime Minister. And of course then the son was like, oh, they're traitors, they tried to attack me, they're trying to stop us, and it devolved. But the Jack had the Polaroids on her, and they fell out of her pocket, and the Stephen started looking through them, and he put two and two together, and he shot the son after he tried to shoot, if I remember correctly, he tried to shoot the Prime Minister. He shot the son, and the Prime Minister was like, I failed him, it's my fault, all kind of shocked. But they had to keep going on their zero date. Like, they couldn't stop. They had a timeline they had to stick to, because they had to kidnap the Prime Minister of England, and they had to get him to put a stop to everything, and there was a certain script he had to follow. And so they were doing this. Well, they get the Prime Minister, and that's when they find out that he was being blackmailed, that he was actually one of the original people who created the book, and that him and his college buddies had all thought that they were going to be able to change the world with this information. And then of course things got away from them, and all of his other buddies are dead, and so he's the only one left that even knows any of this stuff. And so they're able to stop it. That obviously the prime minister's son had the wife and the child, and so they were able to get the information from his phone, because they kept the SIM card off of his phone, and then Stephen did his best impression and was able to get the wife and son delivered, and things just kind of wrapped up from there. They were able to save England. Callie and Jack obviously could never go back, so they were going to stay in Wales, and England was saved, yay, from the evil oil people. So it was an interesting take on like a pandemic and how the government could lie to you and control you if you didn't stand up for yourself. And it was a very interesting way to have it done. And like Jack and Callie kind of reconciled, and Jack, relayed that she was a twin, and Jack was actually her twin's name, and her twin died, and she just didn't feel like she could let go, which is why she took on her twin's name, which was all very kind of sweet. Their relationship always kind of, I was kind of unsure about it. Like, you're supposed to love this person and you can't trust them. Neither one of them trusted each other. They have no foundation. Their foundation is not built on trust. It was built on lie after lie after lie after lie. And honestly, Callie had such insecurities that really she should have been working on herself versus trying to be with somebody. So it was interesting. It was a different take. Your heroine wasn't this dashing, not afraid of anything person, which is completely new, because most of the books that I read, the hero is not afraid of anything. And here you have this woman who is filled with anxiety, and she's worried, she doesn't know what to do. And it was really interesting to see how the author handled that and made it relatable to our times now. And so I just thought it was a really interesting book. And honestly, if you're into pandemics and dystopians, and this would definitely be the book for you. Happy reading!